Well, after a little while, it's time to take a look at another professional wrestling game. Yeah, I know, me talking about a pro wrestling game is gonna be as common can be, but wrestling as a sport is something I am passionate about, and while some people may have negative opinions on it, honestly, wrestling is the greatest thing around. Like, people have compared it to theater and art and that kind of thing, but in a more violent, chaotic kind of manner, which is a little weird, but, you know, it does kind of make sense. I mean, have you ever seen anyone in a performance of Moulin Rouge getting thrown off the stage? No? Well, if you watch professional wrestling, you've seen that kind of thing a lot. But by far, the most underrated wrestling company at the moment is TNA, Total Non-Stop Action Wrestling. They've been around for 22 years. Yeah, that's a long time, and in those 22 years, they've had one hell of a legacy. I mean, they've created some of the greatest stars this business has ever seen, gave mainstream exposure to many great names, and gave some legends one last time in the spotlight. For better or for worse. You decide. Honestly, as an Australian, we did have TNA. Although I think it was really hard to find in Australia to watch on TV. I mean, it was on Foxtel, but I think it was first on Fuel TV? Anyone remember that channel? I remember it airing, like, all the G4 shows, but I think I remember it airing TNA. I'm not too sure, but I do remember it airing on Main Event. Not just the pay-per-views, the actual weekly product. So, there's that. But hey, 2024 seems to be the year of TNA. After all, they've just had a massive rebrand, which has went pretty damn well for them so far. Their talent are getting over AF across the world, and they've struck with some pretty big partnerships. I mean, they're partnering up with the WWE now. Like, how? I know how. It's because the company's actually great. But cast your minds back to 2008. The video game landscape was definitely changing around this time, and Midway, well, they were in a bit of a crisis point. They had released some pretty good games over a few years, but the arcade division basically drew up, and, well, the company wasn't doing too well in the home console game space. Well, with games releasing like Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe and Rampage Total Destruction around this time, yeah, it wasn't a good time to be a Midway fan. However, they would gain a pretty big license around this time, and, well, that license was TNA. In 2008, TNA was on the rise. They were basically the #2 promotion in North America at this point, and they were growing faster and faster thanks to their television deal with Spike in the US. So hey, 6 years into your company and you get a video game? That is some good work in there. And hey, even on the biggest platform of the era, the Wii, I'll tell you, this game's actually pretty good. And even with the compromises of the Wii version, this is a bit of a hidden gem. But why is TNA Impact a hidden gem? Well, let's find out. Already there's some really good presentation there in the menus. Like, it definitely has that TNA feel where it is grittier than WWE, but also its own thing. Like, they were a different beast at this point, and the presentation definitely shows. Hell, they had some of their talent involved in some of the tutorial videos you can find in the game, such as the Fallen Angel, Christopher Daniels, and the phenomenal AJ Styles, who... yeah, now I can see why Samoa Joe was really into his wife. but those tutorial videos are obviously tutorials. The best way to know what you're doing is to play the game, so let's do that. I think we'll start with an exhibition match, and I'm gonna pick, well, Scott Steiner. I mean, he knows a thing or two about math.
You take your 30-30 and a third chance, minus my 25% chance, and you got an 8 1/3 chance of winning at sacrifice.
And you know what? Since AJ was in one of the tutorials, let's take him on. I mean, he's been busy feuding with Cody Rhodes lately, and he's probably gonna go back to TNA, so why not? Now, obviously, presentation is a big thing in these kind of wrestling games, and you know what? Already, I'm very impressed with the presentation. I mean, just look at these entrances. I mean, yeah, they're just videos, not actual in-game entrances like the SmackDown vs. Raw series, but you know what? This does look pretty good for the era. But graphics and presentation doesn't matter if the game plays like shit. So, how does it play? Well, it's very different. Okay, here's what you need to know about the controls. You have a kick button, a punch button, a grab button, and an action button, alongside your usual reversal button and run button and moving with the joystick. You know, all that good thing. But there's also a modifier button. What that means is that, well, that's what you need to use to access much deeper moves, like, wow, no, finishes. Yeah, in this game, if you want to perform a finisher, you're gonna have to use the modifier button, grab your opponent, and press the action button. Sounds simple, yes, but oh boy, at first I couldn't figure this shit out, but eventually I got around to figuring it, and you know what? It ain't too bad of a system. I mean, compared to what the WWE games are doing today, like, yeah, there's definitely some elements taken, but obviously it is a very different system here. Obviously, controls are the hardest thing to describe in a video like this, but if you've played the game, then you'll definitely know that it can take a bit of time to get used to, but once you do indeed get used to it, yeah, it's actually pretty good. Like, sure, it's not the easiest control system to figure out at first, but once you get used to it, it's actually pretty good. And yes, I'm using the class controller for this because I am dealing with the Wiimote and the waggling. Yeah, this is a no waggle zone, folks. No waggle! But I mentioned earlier about the presentation and the graphics sort of thing, and you know what? I think these look really good. Like, this is running on the Nintendo Wii. Like, the Wii's hardware is very much 6th generation. It ain't 7th. So, how does this look really good? Like, look, the graphics are not gonna fully blow you away as such, but for the time and for the system itself, it actually looks really nice. Now, granted, I'm running this game on the Wii U, so obviously it has the benefit of looking even better, but still, you gotta admit, it's pretty impressive. Like, AJ Styles looks like AJ Styles, and Scott Steiner, well, he's just busy complaining about fat asses.
He's fat!
But we took down AJ Styles, and hey, that's all that matters. I mean, as Steiner math goes,
the numbers don't lie, and they spell disaster for you as sacrifice.
But you know what they don't teach with Steiner math? How easy it is to beat up terrible commentators.
What?
There's a fair share of modes in this game, and obviously we're not gonna get to every last one of them, but you know, there's definitely a pretty good amount of modes here. And as for the roster, well, in the base roster, it's actually really good. It's basically got something for everyone, for the veterans, the newcomers. Like, if you're someone who is familiar with pro wrestling, there's someone you'll probably know being in the game. Like, you look at this cover, and most people outside of North America who don't watch TNA, well, they probably don't know who AJ Styles or Samoa Joe is at the time, but they definitely know about Kurt Angle. So, if you were living in regions that didn't have TNA at this point, but had the video game, seeing Kurt Angle in the box, that probably could have sold you on the game. But for this case, I'm gonna go with Christian Cage for this matchup. I mean, after all, it was recently Father's Day, and he's a pretty decent father. Although one of his kids has been a bit weird, hanging out with his Japanese mate and two men who really like the super kick. Come home, Jack! And as for his opponent... yeah, I fucking hate Booker T on commentary.
Shut it, please.
Seriously, WWE, please replace him with Mauro Ranallo. Like, Booker's gotten so annoying over the last few months. Just put him out of his misery.
Why is she dressed like that?
Speaking of commentary, it's okay. I mean, Don West and Mike Tenay do a pretty decent job on commentary in the game. I mean, they did a pretty decent job on TV, but, well, they don't really have much to work with here. There's not as much commentary here, unlike in the WWE 2K series, so obviously you don't really hear that many voice lines. But, hey, it is nice that they're there. Same thing with Jeremy Borash doing the ring announcing in the game. I mean, TNA does have their fair share of ring announcers, but I think Jeremy Borash is probably their best one. Yeah, Jeremy Borash is the GOAT. Not just at booking, but at ring announcing. Hell, even on commentary he's good.
Well, these people don't like you at all.
But what commentary doesn't really point out are the two meters at the top. The impact meter and the stun meter. The stun meter allows you to, well, stun your opponent for a little bit. It's nice that that's a thing, but it's just there. Like, they could have done more with it, like add more move options for when your opponent is stunned, but it just stuns them. And you have to twiddle the joysticks, so yeah. As for the impact meter, oh, I love the impact meter. Sure, it's a bit of a pain in the ass to get your finisher, but once you do, and once you figure out how to do your finisher, man, the finishers look really good in this game, not gonna lie. And well, that's Booker T dealt with. Hope you enjoy commenting Roxanne Perez matches, because you seem to simp for her. But hey, all good wrestling games have a signature match type, and TNA Impact definitely has a signature match type in the Ultimate X. Now, granted, Ultimate X is probably one of TNA's best matches in general. Like, the whole idea of the giant X is pretty fun, having to climb up to get the X. I mean, there's no ladders involved, you just gotta use your body and use the giant cables that are hanging above. It's a fun match, and seeing it as a match on TV, it's pretty good. But as a match in a video game, oh, it is fun. Like, legitimately, the ways you're able to pull down your opponent and take him out is pretty fun. Although trying to get that X can be a pain in the ass. Now, for this match, I use Shock Boy. No, not that Shock Boy, this Shock Boy. The Shock Boy who eventually turned into a Stone Cold impersonator. Seriously, that actually happened. And well, since AJ Styles was talking about him, I think we'll take care of Samoa Joe. I mean, he is the Samoan submission machine, so should be pretty easy, right? Nope, it was not. Okay, here's my problem with Ultimate X. The way you get up to the X. Like, legitimately, how the fuck did you have to make it that hard to get it? You have to use the modifier button, and you have to press a certain button to get up to the X. Like, it can be a pain in the ass, and I failed multiple times trying to get the X, but once you get to the X, well, it's a simple timing-based minigame, and that at least is good, but getting to the X, that ain't fun. Still though, the match itself is pretty fun, and definitely worth a go with friends. It's just, yeah, you're gonna have to take some time to getting used to how it works. But hey, Ultimate X is a fun match type, but speaking of fun, I think a lot of you guys are probably gonna ask me about how I feel about this, so let's talk about the single player campaign and the elephant in the room when we're talking about TNA Impact. Suicide! Brief history lesson, Suicide is the main character in the game's story mode. And, well, he's a pretty badass character. So much so that TNA thought, you know what would be a great idea? Actually make him a real wrestler. Yeah, so we have a video game character crossing into the real world. That's amazing. I ever really happened in, like, media as such. Like, you never really see Cal Kestis show up in Disneyland, so this is kind of insane how that was possible. Granted, it was a bit of a marketing stunt for the video game, but it paid off pretty well. Suicide is a multiple-time X Division champion, so hey, the guy did pretty well for himself. Well, the single-player campaign does involve around you getting back to TNA and getting back your contract and all that, and, well, getting back your title and figuring out just who you were. I mean, amnesia storylines are pretty common in wrestling, I think, but this does it pretty alright. I mean, there's definitely some surprising cameos in this mode. Like, we've got Robert Roode, we've got Cowboy James Storm, we've got Black Machismo, Jay Lethal, and Kevin Nash? God, I forgot he was in TNA. But I will say, the campaign is pretty good. Like, it's definitely deep for what it is, and it is a bit of fun. Just seeing Kevin Nash doing voice lines and everything. Definitely not something I would have expected, but you know what? It's pretty fun. And well, I think that concludes me talking about this game, because, you know, there's a lot I could go through, but obviously I don't have all the time in the world, but safe to say, this is a really good game. Seriously, if you're a massive pro wrestling fan, this is the game for you. Like, legit, there's a deep enough roster for everyone. There's a lot of fun match types here, and overall, the game is actually pretty good. The controls are definitely a bit of a getting used to it thing, but it works out alright, and you know what, with the presentation, graphics, and all that, I think it definitely holds up, even in the modern day. Hell, even here on the Nintendo Wii. Now, is this the best wrestling game ever made? Obviously not. Like, there are definitely a lot better, but if you're just looking for a fun wrestling game, this ain't a bad option. I mean, for this being Midway's second ever pro wrestling game, this was a really good time, and honestly, definitely way better than WrestleMania the arcade game, 100%. But obviously, I do have my minor complaints with this game, and for that will dock it a little bit to a 4 out of 5, but if you can get your hands on this game, no matter what platform, it's a really damn good game, and it's definitely worth a go at least. Now, this would be TNA's only home console game, however, it would get a handheld title a few years later in TNA Impact Cross the Line. Actually published by Bandai Namco, weirdly enough, but it's a game that we might cover one day, but for now, I think it's safe to say, we could definitely do with a new TNA game. Like, think about it. The amount of talent they have today could make an amazing video game. I mean, just imagine a video game where you can play as Moose, Josh Alexander, Broken Matt Hardy, Jordan Grace, Tasha Steeles, and all the others who are amazing on the TNA roster. Oh, and I think I might have forgotten one, but I don't know. You might have to say his name in the comments. But hey, with TNA celebrating 20 years of Slammiversary, and with their recent partnership with WWE, well, clearly the company is on a rise, and I wouldn't be surprised if they get another video game sooner rather than later. Well, let's just hope so. You know, I think that actually went really well. What do you mean by that? Like, I think more than enough people got a pretty good understanding of how good of a game TNA Impact was. Okay, I know you're a massive wrestling fan, but that? Out of every other game you could have thought of? Look, honestly, I probably would have chose something else, but I put it to a fan vote, and, well, that's what the fans want, so that's what I did. Okay, I gotta ask you this. Why are your fans just so weird? Like, legit, why would they come up with that? God damn it, like, I know you're my conscience or some shit, but you don't have to be that much of a dickhead. Well, next time, I'm picking the game, I'll tell you. And you know what? I think I can pick a really damn good game. A game that none of those fans would have thought of. Well, what did you think of for next time? Oh, that game? It's over there. Go get it. Okay, then. Okay, are you suggesting that I'm horny?